So then the notice of violation on 38 Howard Avenue is continued until April 25th.
As is item B.
And you beat me to the punch. Item B as well. And we have a different notice of violation, 72 Parish Farm and 10 High Meadow Road, regulated activity without a permit. And this is tabled pending review of application. Any update here, Jamie?
No, I'm still waiting on the revised plans. I guess the question I have for the commission is, do you want me to bring this back for the commission to review, or if the revised plans are satisfactory and I sign off on the permit, is that satisfactory to close out the notice of violation? Or would you like to be updated on the situation? Do you want it on your agenda again, or do you want me to try and take it off?
Right, right. I can't imagine somebody didn't jump all over that one.
Commissioner Goklowski, I don't have a problem with Jamie working her magic and then advising us when she's completed her magic.
Okay.
I agree. Okay, now we have some applications for review. Inland Wetland 240201, 380 Shore Drive, one-story art studio with support spaces and breakfast nook.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. So at the last meeting, the commission reviewed this in detail. There were a couple of outstanding things that were pretty minor. There was $16 of application fee to be submitted that has been received. And in review of the erosion controls, it was raised that some additional details on maintenance of the erosion controls and inspections should be added to the plans. That information has been added to the plans. Based on the review at the last meeting, I think that the commission's concerns have been addressed. Just to remind everyone, existing single family house, proposed addition to the rear. There's a pond that spans the subject property and the neighboring property with an overflow that goes under Shore Drive and discharges kind of out over by Orchard House. So at the last meeting, we had all these details on installing the erosion controls. And since then, we've gotten these additional details on, again, the erosion control maintenance and inspection procedures. And we have received the outstanding portion of the fee. So the applicant does have representation present if the commission has any questions, and I do have a staff report that I updated in response to the revised materials if the commission wants to look at that.
This is Commissioner Beck.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Begamont. Those additional things that were put into the details, is that considered the narrative that was being asked for?
It's a little, yeah, I mean, there's definitely narrative details in there. I think it's consistent with what the commission would require on a project of this scale.
Commissioner Goklowski, I believe Commissioner Bada raised the question about the access of the construction equipment so close to the wetlands. The access, I guess the driveway is very narrow.
So we can let the applicant speak to that a bit, but I think one thing to keep in mind is that this is a residential addition. So it's not like a new commercial development where it's going to have triaxles coming in and out all the time. And it is where there's an existing driveway already. So they are minimizing the impact as much as I think is feasible given the site conditions. But Matt Bruton, I don't know if you want to expand on that since you've held on this long. I think you did.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Just for the record, Matt Bruton, professional engineer for BL Company, 355 Research Parkway, Meriden. Yeah, I mean, Jamie summed it up nicely there. it's an existing driveway. It's the only way to get to the back of the house. As you can see, obviously we're tight on the left-hand side of the house. If you look on the left-hand side of the plan, there's no room to really go around that without encroaching over a neighbor's property. Not looking to get an easement to just drive, the small amount of trucks that we would need to use to kind of build this addition. So we have, double row of, a silt fence and wattle and construction entrance on a already compacted driveway that does circulate on the right-hand side. So I think it's pretty straightforward, practical use of that entrance given the size and scale of the project.
Commissioner Goklowski, I think Commissioner Zbada's question was at the last meeting was the concern of the cement truck because you're going to be pouring a foundation.
Yes, there will be a need for a cement truck. It's not a full foundation; it's a crawl space. But yes, we would need a foundation poured from a truck. Yep.
Okay. Do you know the side the amount of concrete that's going to be poured is going to be poured by one of the big trucks?
I assume it would be by one of the larger trucks, as opposed to being done by hand. It could be done by probably one or two trucks in a 1 or 2 day period.
Okay.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. As I recall, I think the outstanding concern was the maintenance of it to make sure that it continues to operate as functioned, and isn't going to transport and impact the pond. But it does have the double silt fence and double erosion controls consisting of silt fence and straw wattle. And it is already a compacted area that's definitely an established travel way. So I think it's reasonable.
Why don't you put up the staff report, Jamie?
I'm going to jump right to the possible conditions for consideration, unless, if commissioners want me to review any other parts, let me know. But I've got contact the inland wetland department to request initial erosion control inspection prior to land disturbance. There's no site clearing, so I don't have the pre-construction meeting. And be a final inspection upon completion of the project. Any disturbed lawn areas from excavation and or staging shall be reseeded to establish long-term soil stabilization prior to removal of erosion controls. A qualified PE shall certify that the grading and stormwater system on site is installed consistent with this approval upon completion of installation. No leaves or yard waste / debris shall be raked, blown, or deposited within or adjacent to the pond in order to prevent detrimental impacts, including but not limited to filling. And then standard condition per Connecticut general statutes, approval does not take place until any zoning approval that is required has been granted. And then the standard conditions and general provisions of all permits. Any questions from commissioners?
Anybody have additions to the conditions that Jamie has just gone over?
This is Commissioner Begeman, and the risk of being redundant. I was listening to last meeting, and Suzanne Baudet was talking about the narrative. And I know, Jamie, you said that those details are now in the details, but she was talking about people who are in the field doing the work. So if you think that the additional details for maintaining, that pad, etc., are sufficient, then I'm good with that. But Matt said there's a 3-sentence narrative that I'm going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing on a project like this is making sure they know to install the erosion controls, contact us for an inspection. And then, I mean, the construction sequence on a project of this scale is kind of self-evident. Like, obviously, you're going to have to excavate for the foundation. You're going to have to pour the foundation. You have to backfill the foundation. And then once you get past that aspect, the construction of the structure itself, that's kind of outside the purview of the commission. So I don't really know what additional information would be in the construction sequence. Beyond the continued maintenance of the erosion controls, and all of that information is certainly within the details provided down here. And the fact that they should be.
I'd point, Jamie, I mean, some of the critical ones are number 7, number 25, and number 26. I know I was joking that it could be 3 sentences. I think I gave you a lot more here, which is pretty typical what we would do on a legitimate commercial retail project. But number 7 is pretty critical. Contractor shall inspect all sediment and erosion controls before and after each storm of 0.25 inches or greater, and at least weekly to verify the controls are operating properly and make repairs where necessary. And then if you go down to number 25 and 26, they say an area shall be considered that achieved final stabilization when it's minimum of 70% uniform perennial vegetation cover, other permanent non-vegetative cover with density sufficient to resist accelerated surface runoff, erosion, and subsurface characteristics sufficient to resist sliding. I won't finish the rest of it. 26, maintain all permanent and temporary erosion control devices in effective condition throughout the construction period. Upon completion, sweep parking lot, remove all temporary, right? So basically telling you telling this contractor right on the plan, he can't avoid it. It's not in a separate document. It's right on the plan in front of his face. You need to inspect these weekly, and based on the amount of rain that's happening with these storms, and it's got to stay in place until we hit this critical timeline. So, I mean, those are the two big items that should give you something to hang your hat on if a contractor is not following along with what we've discussed the past 2 meetings.
Yeah, and in the beginning, it talks about the installation of the erosion controls and prior to start of work. So I think it covers.
Great. Thank you.
Anybody want to forward a motion regarding 380 Shore Drive?
Try. Item 240201 380 Shore Drive. I move to approve the application with the conditions for consideration in the staff report prepared for the meeting. Is it 2/22/24?
3.
28.
Prepared for the meeting 3/28/2024, last revised March 27th.
Okay, thanks. With the staff report prepared for today's meeting 3/28/24, revised 3/27/24, and with the standard conditions for consideration as well, and the general provisions in the issuance of all permits.
This is Commissioner
second?
Begeman. I second it, Commissioner Begeman.
Great. Okay, I guess any further discussion? All right, we're going to vote. Commissioner Papatonis,
Commissioner Papantonis, aye.
Commissioner Armrod,
Commissioner Ormrod, aye.
Commissioner Begeman,
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Gokowski,
Commissioner Goklowski, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Okay,
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
As
you
well.
too. Next up is inland wetland 240202, 1 to 17 Beacon Hill Road and Beacon Hill Road, formerly part of the property known as 83 Rose Hill Road, adult residential community. Do we have an applicant on the line here?
I believe we do.
Yep.
Amy
Can you
Frederick.
hear me? This is Doug Anderson.
Heard you loud and clear.
Loud and
Jamie,
clear.
where are
Okay.
we at on this in terms of
Yeah.
information
Amy
that you were
Frederick.
looking for?
In the wetland agent, just to remind and set the stage for the commissioners that were not present at the last meeting. I do think the commission is going to want to schedule a public hearing for this application, so hopefully you all had a chance to look at the application materials beforehand, so that hopefully we can kind of work on some of the scheduling components of review of this application. I think, if the commission does determine to have a public hearing, you're gonna want to keep the review component of the application to that public hearing. but I think it would be appropriate for the applicant to give a brief overview of what their project is. Some of the things that came up at the last meeting were public hearing, site walk, and possibly peer review, because there is direct wetland activity directly within wetland areas. I think the peer review would be the most time sensitive one in as far as making sure that there's not unnecessary delays. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to the applicant. And I can either screen share the site plan if you would like to show them, or if you would like to pull it up on your screen, you can screen share.
No, that'd be great if you could do that. Okay, for the record, my name is Doug Anderson, represent Beacon Hill Property LLC, current owners of the parcel up on Rose Hill Road. The parcel has a little bit of a history that you guys may or may not remember. It was originally approved for a 10-lot subdivision somewhere around 2009, 2010 era. Prior to that, it was known as the Rose Hill Poultry Processing Facility, a chicken processor, if you will. So over the years, the property has sold to a couple developers along the way. It never was able to get off the ground. There was a number of reasons, predominantly the sewer and waste aspect of the development. So in 2020, Paul Santa Barbara, who's a managing member of Beacon Hill Property, purchased the property, also owns a property adjacent to the site, and just came to me and asked me for some development ideas for the site. So we looked at a couple different scenarios, kind of landed in the current scenario that you see in front of you, which is a 22-unit active adult project with a mix of 2, 3, and 4-unit buildings. And basically what we've tried to do is follow the model of the original subdivision as far as road layout, stormwater management, things of that nature, with a private road, so a little bit less intense on the asphalt and so forth. And pretty much what you see in front of you here. Site was originally 9.7 acres. Upon the subdivision approval, a little over 2 acres was deeded to the town of Branford, which you could see on the left-hand side of the screen there. So we've come back with this, this concept again. You trying to utilize the same footprint that existed on the original subdivision. This will be a common interest community, so kind of controlled maintenance and management of the site. And I have our engineer here, Zach Georgina from Giuliano Associates, as well as our soil scientist, George Logan. So they're here to answer any questions. I know, this is all public hearing stuff, so I can keep it brief like that. And if you have any questions of them technical, we can do that too.
Commissioner Goklowski, could you just say the number of units again, how the building's going to be done?
Yeah. So the project, and I'll add one other caveat to this. The project's 22 units, made up of a 2-unit, 3-unit, and 4-unit buildings. So from the site plan, you could see to the right there are 2 4-unit buildings. Central of the project, there's a 3-unit building to the left of the road, a 2-unit building to the right of the road at the arc of the road, and then 3 3-unit buildings to the top of the road that abut the Beacon Hill Preserve along there. Okay. Pretty much all staying within the same footprint that existed when it was a residential subdivision, although those were just approved lots with no specific site plans. But we try to maintain buffers to the open space there. But it's 22 units, and one of the issues with the development and why I don't think it was ever able to come to fruition is that there's a pretty big sewer infrastructure expense that was actually designed by the town of Branford to bring sewers to this area. So currently sewers stop at the top of Rose Hill Road. And the town, I think about 10 years ago, embarked on a designed to service the entire area of Rose Hill Road, Kent Hill Road, and I believe Pinsky Lane that will eventually tie back down into the Lakeview Plaza down there. So a pretty extensive sewer project. So since 2020, Paul and myself, we've had some numerous discussions with the sewer authority and the town engineer trying to figure out a way to make the project work, in the 10 lot scenario that he inherited. And there were some dynamics, being that he is an adjacent property owner now, that didn't exist from the prior developers, to be able to bring sewer up through his property. So we explored a couple different options. The town and the sewer commission felt very strong about providing sewers to this area. In fact, most of the houses along Rose Hill Road in front of this property have failing septic system issues, some of which have been replaced, some of which I believe have refailed again due to high water, conditions and things of that nature. So, we've kind of come to a agreement and understanding of how the sewers will be brought to the town, how much will contribute to that, and how this project, helps be the catalyst to be able to bring the sewers to the area and kind of solve some issues that exist up there.
This is Commissioner Bass. I mean, can you, the legend and the size of the font here is making it difficult to see where the wetland lines are. Can you point those out? That helps.
Okay, so the wetland lines are the lines with the little triangles off of them, which you
Yep.
probably can't really see in the little marsh type symbol. So there's one over here, which has no proposed wetland impact. And then there's another one on the opposite side of the property with what I think they've referred to as a finger type section. So the light blue area is impacted wetland areas. This blue area is a proposed drainage easement area, so that's not the same blue. And then the green areas are their proposed mitigation areas. So it does identify proposed direct wetland impact is a total of 4,549 square feet. And the proposed mitigation area is identified on the plan as 13,845. I believe the wetland mitigation plan had a slightly higher number, and I'm not sure because I think I'm not really sure from the materials provided, but it kind of sounded like perhaps a portion of the impacted wetland areas will also be mitigated. And if I had to guess, that's probably what this line here is depicting, and I would imagine it's including this section of the blue wetland impact and this section over here. I don't know if the applicant or one of his representatives can confirm if that's correct. I see that there's a hand raised, so if you can respond to that, please go ahead.
Yep. Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. You are correct. Internally, we had discussion about whether we wanted to present the rehabilitation portion as counting towards our mitigation, or just do straight what was new creation. And that's where the difference of numbers comes from between Mr. Logan's report and what's shown on the site plan. So all the numbers are correct. The site plan did not include the rehabilitation portion, which if you zoom in on the finger area a bit, or if I can just drive here real quick, or this is fine. Yeah. So you see where we're coming into this oblong shape, the area which just overlapped with the two line types, that's one of the portions that will be rehabilitated and is counting towards that additional 2,000, the difference between George Logan's report totals and my totals. If you follow the finger down as well, this area that overlaps into the green, that as well as one of those areas. And the last one, if we follow down to, if that's the finger, we'll call this the thumb. This zone as well will also be included in those three, comprise that 2,000 difference. Zach Georgina, Giuliano Associates, working as a project engineer on this, for the record.
Jamie Frederick, in the wetland agent. I certainly think that those historically would comply with what the commission particularly in these locations with what the commission has looked at as mitigation. I have expressed to the applicant that historically, I'm not really sure the context of accepting the bottom of a wet basin as mitigation. However, I think understanding that there's those additional areas, they might have enough to do the 2-to-1, even if the commission decides not to interpret that as mitigation as required by the regulations, because as you can see, even with that discrepancy from the site plan and the wetland mitigation report, they're doing 4,549 square feet of impact and proposing 13,845 square feet of mitigation, which certainly exceeds the 2-to-1 requirement.
Yes, Commissioner Bassman, how are you treating the stormwater off the roof?
Zach Georgian and Giuliano Associates again. There's a variety of options. We're taking a couple of approaches. First, generally speaking, roof water is considered clean in terms of oils or other contaminants. It does have leaves and such in it. The three buildings, buildings 5, 6, and 7 are being daylighted, treated by the 3-to-1 grassy slope down into to feed one of the proposed wetlands and then spill over and continue further down and off the site. Other buildings are currently being tied into the stormwater system, which is going to be directed through a Vort Sentry hydrodynamic separator before entering the basin for detention, infiltration, and controlled release.
So as I'm looking at this, Commissioner Bassman, as I'm looking at the plan that I see on the screen, the buildings to the top of the, well, now they just moved, but the buildings that were at the top of the screen, those are just going to sheet flow down?
So they're going to be collected by essentially a gutter system, 2 drains. Those drains will be piped underneath the road and released along the slope, and then treated by grassy swale, the slope, to feed down into one of our designed wetlands and then further beyond.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Is there any sort of energy dissipator or spreader proposed for those, or is that not anticipated to be necessary given the size of the roofs?
Not anticipated to be necessary based on the size of the roofs, because we are doing individual outlets for the roofs. So it's not going to be one large pipe for all 3 roofs combining. It's going to be 3 individual smaller pipes.
Commissioner Gokowski, how many are these going to be apartments, correct? Or are they 1 or 2 bedroom apartments?
Doug Anderson from Beacon Hill Property, for the record. They are actually going to be condominium for sale units. They are designed for active adult type buyers, 55, it's deed restricted, 55 and older. So all units have master bedrooms and or a second bedroom on the primary level. And some have a secondary bedroom or loft on the second floor. But all for sale, condominium, common interest community, private road.
Okay, so they're basically be property owners and not renters.
Correct. Yeah, controlled by an association, absolutely.
Commissioner Begeman, going back to that idea, the daylighting of those 3 buildings, the roof runoff onto the grassy swale. We heard earlier today about how sheet flow is being discouraged as a method, but in this case, if I'm asking really Jamie, if sheet flow is going toward a retention basin, is that considered different from somebody who is just proposing sheet flow as a way of getting roof runoff taken care of?
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. I would probably actually defer to an engineer on that. I think it really kind of depends on the situation where it's being directed, and if you can sheet flow to a vegetated area that can treat the water and or a retention system that's for treatment of the water, it benefits in the sense it provides more opportunity for infiltration. But
So
I'm not an engineer.
Commissioner Begeman again, the discouragement of sheet flow was when it's in direct contact with a wetland, basically.
Yeah, I think it's really case specific. So if it's just sheet flowing to a wetland without any sort of treatment or time for infiltration, that can be an issue. If it's sheet flowing to an impervious system, impervious area, and then going through a system without treatment, or maybe there is no treatment, it's going sheet flowing over that impervious area and then continuing to sheet flow into a wetland, that certainly doesn't provide for treatment of those flows. So
yeah.
And I think this is the kind of question where I'm going to take this as a springboard for the peer review consideration, because that was brought up at the last meeting. So because we have a lot of new commissioners that haven't necessarily gone through the peer review process, and forgive me, I'm going to stop screen sharing so I can kind of see if I'm losing everyone or not. But the peer review process is triggered when the commission feels that they need to have a third-party expert help review the application, help review the technical aspects of the application. So the applicant obviously has their experts that help present the application. And basically what a peer review does is allow for the commission to hire experts to review the application and the merits or that the application follows, standard and best practices. So oftentimes peer reviews that the commission will consider are an engineering review relative to drainage, and a wetland scientist review relative to, confirming the wetland limits are by and large accurate of what's on site and the impacts to the wetlands and water courses. So if the commission feels that there's going to be significant things that they need technical expertise on, that would be when a peer review would be appropriate. And the peer review is a complex application fee, so it isn't a fee that the applicant would have to pay. Basically, the commission would determine what expertise is needed for the review, request proposals from engineering, soil scientist firms for conducting the review, make a selection based on the responses received. The applicant would then submit the funds corresponding to the price outlined by the selected peer review team. And then after the appropriate paperwork is completed, the peer review would be completed and made available for the applicant and commission to review and make any modifications or responses to that information as may be applicable.
Commissioner Bassman, Jamie, it is what in your mind triggers the public hearing? The wetland impact being as large as it is, the size of the project, what moves us in that public hearing direction?
Good question. So there's 3 reasons for the commission to have a public hearing. And of course, so it says the agency shall not hold a public hearing on an application unless the agency determines that the proposed activity may, 1, have a significant impact on wetlands or water courses. 2, a petition is signed by at least 25 persons who are 18 years of age or older, which obviously is not applicable at this point. So I'm not going to finish reading that one. Or 3, the agency finds that a public hearing regarding such application would be in the public interest. So I think that the amount of wetland impact consistent with previous review by the commission, the commission has considered that it may have a significant impact on wetlands or water courses. And the keyword is may there, it doesn't say will. So it means in your review, you're considering whether or not it's going to have a significant impact. And as part of that, the commission can always consider prudent and feasible alternatives. But if you determine to hold a public hearing because it may have a significant impact on wetlands and watercourses, then the commission must consider prudent and feasible alternatives, which the applicant has not submitted yet at this point, but I've had a conversation with them and they understand that that's something that they're going to have to submit. And basically prudent and feasible alternatives are, or sorry, let me backtrack and kind of rephrase this. Prudent and feasible alternative analysis. So prudent and feasible alternative analysis is alternative plans that were considered but rejected for either not being prudent and or feasible. So it's not to say that look at all these other things we could do because they cause less impact to wetlands. It's look at all these other things we considered that might cause less impact to wetlands and watercourses, but this is why we decided it wasn't prudent or feasible to do this. So
Commissioner Gopowski, Jamie, would it be prudent for us to take one step at a time? And the first step I would suggest is, you know, the weather's getting a little better. Maybe if we do a site walk and take a look at what, you know, physically see what it is. You know, we can look at paper all day long, but if you physically actually review the property, then we know what we're kind of talking about. And then we can decide, you know, about a public hearing, about a peer review and things like that. That's, you know, that's my suggestion.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I think that makes sense. One thing I just want to mention is that the peer review process, if the commission decides the peer review is required, and I certainly understand and respect not wanting to jump and make that decision, especially since a lot of the commissioners on the call are fairly new and maybe haven't been through that process before. So I do think a site walk is beneficial, so that way the commissioners can see what the site condition is. But I would also encourage that the commission doesn't want to wait too long to make that decision on the peer review, because the commission will have to make that decision. Staff will have to send out the request for proposals, provide time for the firms to provide a response, schedule review with the commission, have the applicant submit the funds, and then have enough time for the peer review team to do the review. So it is a lengthy process. So one thing that might make sense is to schedule a site walk prior to the next meeting, where the commission can then make a more informed decision, have some more time to look at the materials, and maybe there will be more commissioners available on the call and you won't be making this decision at 11:30 at night. And I do see the applicant has their hand raised, so I don't know if you want to see if they have any input that would further speak to this topic.
Zach George and Giuliano Associates. Jamie, I just want a clarification. I don't believe prudent and feasible requires it to be less impactful, just alternatives that were reviewed and why they were ruled out. If Branford has a specific clause about that, I just want clarification for myself.
Let me look up the language.
This is Commissioner Begeman. While Jamie's looking up that language, does anybody else from looking at this application already think that a peer review is a good idea? To me, the scope of the project and the wetlands that are already going to be mitigated, and the fact that it's also abutting a preserve, to me, kind of tips us toward wanting a peer review. And if there are enough of us on here who feel comfortable thinking, if we think that tonight, then we can get that in motion tonight. Just a thought.
Commissioner Papantonis, I'm with you, Commissioner Begeman, on that. Yes. Yes, I think we need a peer review.
I think a parallel path would be, given the time frame and the efforts involved in getting a peer review, we could certainly move down the road of a peer review and schedule the site walk accordingly. And if we find something on the site walk that wasn't in the letter to the potential peer review folk, then we amend what our requirements are and go from there. But I'd hate to lose time.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent in response to the question on alternatives. I think we have it in a couple of different spots in our regs, but in section 7.7 I3, it says alternatives investigated, which would cause less or no environmental impact to wetlands or watercourses, and why the alternatives were rejected in favor of the regulated activities proposed in the application. Applicants shall be prepared to discuss alternatives at the meeting. All such alternatives shall be diagrammed on a separate site plan or drawing, including a written narrative, and be submitted with the application. I'll just elaborate that the commission has required a drawing. They're not requiring a full plan set, obviously, or, full level of details, just enough so the commission can visualize what the alternative is.
Commissioner Gopowski, Jamie, did you say that this was approved for a subdivision at one time?
There was a previous approval that was issued. I think it was either 2008, 2009, 2010, somewhere around there, for 10 lot residential subdivision. I think that was represented by the applicant, but it is in fact the case. And during that was filed on the land records. So the open space associated with that subdivision approval has already been deeded off and is no longer part of the.
Was there a peer review done on that application prior to?
No, there was not a peer review done on that application. That application, like I said, was around 2008, 2009. And it also had almost half the amount of direct wetland impact.
Okay.
And part of that is
my concern.
And part of that's
Okay.
due to regulation changes. Again, the applicant has their hand raised.
Jamie's absolutely correct. The previous application was before the zoning regulation change, which allowed 2-to-1 slopes. Now the zoning regulation requires 3-to-1 slopes, which is a 50% increase in rise to run ratio. So our doubling of the impact is essentially directly due to the zoning change, not due to us pushing back slopes to try and gain real estate or gain space.
So, Jamie, give us a template maybe for the meetings and what we need to decide. We have a meeting coming up on the 11th. Is it possible on the 11th that we define what it is that we want the peer review candidates to review, and get that out so that 2 weeks later or whatever, we've got some proposals in front of us, and then schedule the site walk on a time frame that parallels that.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. So if you wait until the April 11th meeting, the earliest we would be able to get the request out to potential parties would be April 12th. I don't know that 2 weeks would be enough turnaround for responses and for us to get the materials out and to have reviewed them. So I think you would have to wait a full month before you'd be able to review. So if April 11th,
that may be, Mr. Brett, that may be okay because we've got the public hearing.
I'm
already scheduled.
Trying to walk us through it. So April 11th, that would be May 9th, which without an extension from the applicant would be the date that the commission, the last regularly scheduled meeting the commission has to schedule the public hearing. So typically speaking, if possible, the commission has tried to get the peer review available prior to the public hearing or as the public hearing is opening up, so that way that information is available towards the front of the public hearing and we're not having a whole bunch of review without that information available. And then once the review is selected, then they would probably need, it would probably be another month before they need 2 to 3 weeks to do the review, have the review submitted at least a week prior to the meeting. So that way the applicant has a chance to see it and the commissioners have a chance to see it prior to the meeting. So again, if April 11th, I think you could select May 9th, and you'd be looking at having the peer review probably for the June 13th meeting. I see a representative of the applicant has their hand raised. Would you like to?
Yes, so this is George Logan for the record, Rema Ecological Services. Jamie, I'm just wondering if there was a site walk before the 11th, and that's a meeting, can't the decision be made at that time?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So a site walk is for orientation purposes only, and there cannot be any discussion on the content of the application, if you will, at that meeting. The commission could theoretically, this has come up before this evening, commission could have a special meeting. It would be a short one, but you could even schedule it for the same day, an hour later.
Understood.
I do think particularly if you're thinking about doing a peer review and making that decision at the April 11th meeting, I do think it might be beneficial to have that site walk beforehand, particularly if you think it's going to influence what you might ask for. So that way you have all that information beforehand. And
Commissioner Bassman, I think that's certainly prudent. The thing I was getting to is that on the 11th, to the extent that we have 2 or 3 folk that we're going to send the material to, that we've already scoped out who those parties would be and come up with the appropriate information that we're requesting them to review, and then add to that whatever we pick up from the site walk that we want to add to that, so that right after the 11th, we can get that information into the hands of the peer review folk.
I'm sorry, I don't think I followed.
I agree we should schedule the site walk prior to the 11th.
Okay.
But on the 11th, we have already identified who we're going to send peer review to in the event that everybody decides that's a prudent thing to do, and have drafted the information that we're going to be requesting so that the commission can look at those questions and agree that they're appropriate, as well as add anything from the site walk that the commissioners pick up.
Sure. Yeah. Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So kind of to expand on that, there is a list that has been formed since the last time the commission has done a peer review of kind of on-call firms by the Regional Council of Governments. So I would suggest that that list be used for who to send the request for proposals out to. And I can send that list to the applicant prior to the next meeting so that they can identify if they know of any conflict of interest issues with any of the firms. So that way we don't have to bother sending it to them if we know there's a conflict of interest. And I can also send out, we have a little worksheet of kind of standard things that the commission considers when doing a peer review, that commissioners can look at ahead of time to consider the things that you might be requesting expert review on, to kind of help hopefully prepare and streamline that conversation.
Any commissioner have issue with that proposal? Okay.
So it sounds like we've boiled it down to needing to schedule a site visit.
Right.
And scheduling the rest of it at the April 11th meeting, as the commission deems applicable.
With the time change, I guess we could do it in a late afternoon period.
Yeah, that would help me.
Fine by me.
Question for the applicant. Are the wetland flags in place still on site?
George Logan, for the record, no, they're not. However, the wetlands are pretty well defined because they have sort of abrupt boundaries, if you will, in most cases.
This is Commissioner Begman. Is that going to be enough for us to know where the wetland is?
Question for you guys. Yeah, so it wouldn't be out of place for the commission to request for the wetlands to be flagged, particularly, you know, I don't know that they need to flag the areas that are further away from where they're proposing the development, but anywhere where they're anywhere near proposed activity, have it reflagged, and or have the soil scientist present to help with that identification of that area.
Commissioner Begman, I think we need that.
And then I don't know if there's anything else the commission specifically would want staked out. I know some of the things that have been staked out in the past. It's kind of a different development than typical for, but like road center line or center of basin or things like that. I don't know if any of that would be something the commission would be looking for as far as to help with field orientation, and or if the engineering firm has specific things that they would typically stake out for this type of application.
Zach Georgina, Giuliano Associates. Our office is only operating as the engineer in this case, not the surveyor, but typically we would see in an application like this, when a site walk is requested, center line absolutely, and typically the outside most corners for buildings would get placed. I do know that due to the size and the existing topography of the site, it's going to be hard to visualize a lot of that stuff, in addition to the wetlands as well. But to whatever extent the commission is looking to do, we can see what we can do about getting that squared away before your meeting, for your site visit.
This is Commissioner Begman. So that will the big pit, the retention pit, whatever it's called, big swale, can that be marked out? And that like that fingerling and the thumb of those wetlands that are going to be modified in that area? Mitigation.
So just to clarify, you're looking for, on top of replacing the wetlands flags in center line, you would like where the mitigation areas are and the base of the detention pond, correct?
I mean, to me, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
I don't know what other people think.
Yeah, as long as you're out there, I think that the more information we get on the sidewalk, the smoother I think the meetings will go, because we'll have the information in front of us.
Understood.
What does Tuesday, April 9th look?
Another thing that might help for the site walk for orientation purposes, if possible and not overly difficult, would be to overlay the proposed site plan on a recent aerial, maybe, given the fact that you're saying that some of it might be difficult to traverse, it sounds like, and or just to visualize.
George Logan, Rema Ecological. The 9th is difficult for me because I have to be at a public hearing in Brooklyn, Connecticut at 6 o'clock.
How about the following day?
I have to be at a public hearing in town of Granby at 7 o'clock, so it's a little better.
How about Monday, the 8th?
Open.
I'll be in New Hampshire, but if you guys want to.
That's the solar eclipse day.
That's true.
All right. All right.
How about the
Okay.
11th before our meeting?
That's terrifying for me personally, but I can make it work.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, because I mean,
that would work.
that would work.
People like that?
Like around 5-ish. That allow people to run
Yeah.
home, have
Run
dinner,
home, grab a bite, and then
set up.
hit the screen.
Well, I have to drive back 45 minutes, so. Or I can do it on the phone on the way up.
Yeah, or I'm not exactly sure what our agenda looks like. You know, if you're not first on the agenda, hopefully
Well,
not as late as.
I'm still on that other one, so
So is the 11th to go?
works for me. We can figure it out.
Yeah, I think the other one got tabled to the 25th. So
That's right. I forgot about that. You're right.
yeah.
So what's that, Jamie?
I was just saying that Howard got continued to the 25th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that works for the professionals that would have to, you know, probably potentially travel further to get to an electronic device to log in. I guess that's our biggest concern.
Believe me, I've done him while driving, so that's not a problem.
It is what it is. I'll make it work.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at the 11th at 5.
Right.
All right.
Jamie, you'll set out some sort of instructions on exactly where we'll meet.
Yeah. Is the main driveway accessible to get in?
Yeah.
And there's a grassy area next to it that's actually part of the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there'll be some space to park that should be easy to identify. All right, so yeah, we'll send out next week. We'll send out a site walk special meeting agenda for Thursday, April 11th at 5 p.m. at Beacon Hill, which if you Google Beacon Hill, you're not going to get anything. So we'll make sure you know where you're going.
Great.
If you look it up in the town GIS, you'll find it. But we'll make sure you know where you're going.
Great. Well, okay, that's good.
Okay, moving along. You're in 2401.
Okay. Are we confident that that's good? How long do you think it'll take to walk the site? Is it
It's all within an hour, I think, because everything that you want to look at is sort of centrally located. That's easy, the wetlands, the mitigation areas, even climbing up the hill a little bit to see what that upper left area looks like.
okay?
All within an hour.
We'll make it work.
Inland Wetland 240301, 72 Parish Farm Road and 110 High Meadow. Possible agent review.
Jamie,
Any update?
and the wetland agent, as I kind of hinted at before, I'm waiting for revised plans. I just left it on there because it's still a pending application. Do you want me to leave it off until it's resolved and or we're reaching a time frame issue? Just so your agenda looks nicer. Or do you want it on there as a reminder that you have?
Commissioner Gokowski, I think when we talked about you doing your magic on the last one, that we were going to take it off until your magic was done.
Yeah, I mean, alternatively, if you guys want, I can do like a separate section on the agenda that you know is not you, but things that are in the works.
This is Commissioner Begman. I like that idea.
I agree. You done with Parish Road, Parish Farm?
Yeah.
You're smiling.
I was just reading in the chat. Good night or good morning.
I'm going to use that to move along to other business. Inland Wetland 130603 47 Gould Lane.
Everyone's gonna be excited to hear this is tabled to the April 11th meeting.
Okay. Applications for receipt. BRIW 240302, 45 to 81 Short Rocks Road. Pole Bridge and associated trail work. The work has already started.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. I just want to give a brief overview on this. So a while back, the commission had an application for a pole bridge, kind of got morphed into just doing the phase 1 stream bank stabilization. That was all that ended up getting permitted. I was wrapping things up at the end of the day on a Friday and got a picture of a pole bridge being installed. I was like, oh, great. So I have been out there. I haven't seen any obvious impacts of concern beyond, you know, the fact that this has not been permitted and reviewed. And so long story short, it is at the supply pond. So if you want to go check it out, you can. If you have questions as to how to get there, let me know. I did put a memo in the Dropbox, and I think it gives a brief, like 1 sentence. You can view it by here, but if you want to call the office for more information, feel free. If you see it and have any concerns, feel free to reach out to town staff. It's for receipt. It'll be actionable at the next meeting if the commission has all the information they feel they need. So
Was there a short bridge there before, a pole bridge there before?
there was a bridge there a while ago, like I'm
And
not
it-
sure
and it
how long
washed
it
away,
hasn't
didn't
been
it?
there for, but yeah, it washed away. And I'm not sure as to what kind of construction it was. But yes, there was a bridge there before, which they used existing concrete foundation pieces on either side, which they modified slightly for placement of the poles for the pole bridge. The pole bridge is not done, so don't cross it.
Commissioner Begemon, did they stop because they don't have that part permitted?
I'm hoping they have. I have not been back out there to confirm one way or the other. I told them to stop.
Okay.
Although at this point, I'm not really sure that continuing would have much more significant impact. But at the same time, if the commission needs anything changed or whatever, you know, having to undo more. And of course, on the principle of matter, they don't have a permit.
Right.
And I don't think where they're at right now is going to cause any sort of impact to the wetland or water course. And I think it's high enough up without stairs, so it's not going to be like a safety issue for the public. And there is a picture in that memo, and I did put pictures in the file as well.
And then we have Inland Wetland 240303 22 Howard. Replacement of crumbling retaining wall.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. I think this is something I can do administratively. I informed the applicant as such because it is a replacement. It is on the property line though, so they're going to need to access. It's near the property line. I don't know if it's exactly on the property line. I think it's offset a couple of feet, but it's a pre-existing condition that they're replacing because otherwise it's going to be a problem. But they're gonna need to access for construction purposes and erosion control purposes on their neighbor's property. So I told them that I need authorization from that neighbor for the application. So I'm waiting on that. Barring that, I think it's a pretty de minimis thing that I can review administratively.
Anybody have issue with that?
This Commissioner Begemon, I don't have issue, but so in this case, are you you'll be submitted a plan by an engineer or how?
So in this case, I found out, well, Katie found out about it through a building permit application. So they've submitted engineered plans to the building department on the construction of the retaining wall. It is over 4 feet, so it does have to meet building code criteria. So I'm going to defer to the building official on the fact that it's properly, it has proper construction details and meets current up-to-date construction standards. So with that information in mind and the fact that it's replacement of the pre-existing retaining wall, same location, same height, no modifications, which I'll stress, you know, and that they have the erosion control plan, they have the access and the approval from the neighbor, which I think the neighbor's the one that wants the activity to occur because they're concerned about the.
So they're taking the proper steps.
Yes. So hopefully we'll get that authorization soon, and this won't be on the agenda. And if it is, I will have it in that agent category.
Okay, thanks.
Sounds good. You have no agent approvals?
Nope.
We have nothing in correspondence and announcements. There's a motion to adjourn that we can get out of here before midnight.
I second it, Commissioner Gopowski.
Thank you guys for hanging in. You're real troopers.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Appreciate
night.
it.
Good
Have a
night.
good
all.
holiday, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Easter.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.